Welcome in, Mountaineer Nation. On back-to-back days, you have me again for Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports. And if you want to support what I'm doing, help out the algorithm, please hit the like button on this video so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. And would love to have you a subscriber to my channel. Trying to make more continuous content. That's what my brother, who does this professionally, says that I need to do. And sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge, just trying to come up with content that I personally feel like deserves to be talked about day in and day out. So there's sometimes where I think there's situations that happen that maybe some other people decide to talk about, and that's their own prerogative to do. And I don't feel like necessarily talking about it. I don't think it really warrants any sort of kind of discussion. So with this, I kind of gone a little bit back and forth about, but I err on the side of this definitely deserves to be talked about. Anytime that we're talking about actual competition, I feel like I need to talk about it if it's pertaining to football, basketball, and baseball. So the Mountaineers Hoop Squad is participating in the College Basketball Crown Tournament. For the first time ever. It's only been in its second year, so really a young tournament. In competition to, I would say, the NIT in a way. That the NIT, maybe if you don't know this in college basketball history, used to be what the NCAA tournament is. So that's switched. Now the NIT is kind of faded. So Fox Sports partnering with this tournament to be its television media rights holder for this tournament have come up with this. And it features teams that I would say would be NIT eligible, that kind of tournament. So you look at the field, 8 teams: Oklahoma, Colorado, Baylor, Minnesota, Stanford, West Virginia, Rutgers, and Creighton playing in Las Vegas. And I think they're doing a really good job with this tournament of filling what was the weekday void of the NCAA tournament over the course of the last 2 weeks. So games Wednesday, Thursday. Saturday's games are earlier in the day on Saturday than the Final Four. And then Sunday's game comes a day earlier than the national championship game. So smart TV timing, I feel like, on Fox and the Crown basketball tournaments part in this one, because, and I don't know about you, but I feel as if this NCAA tournament has been incredibly entertaining, and it just feels like this is the perfect prime time of the year for basketball. Masters next week. I know we had opening day last week in Major League Baseball, but my head's still just a little bit, as much as I love talking about West Virginia baseball and having a great time following that, my head's still kind of in basketball. So even though this is a bit, I feel like, of a lesser tournament, you wish West Virginia and always want to get to, even if you're just in the first 4, I feel like being even a part of that still can be part of the NCAA tournament is what you aim to be as a basketball program. But still, I think what's intriguing most to this, and this is why you have to have this component, because as I've talked about before, the Gen Z athletes will not do anything without being paid at the Division I level at this point in time. So a $300,000 NIL payout going out to the winning team, $100,000 to the finalist, and then $50,000 to the 2 semifinalist teams. So you split $300,000 how many different ways? That's a nice chunk of change for these athletes if they end up winning, if their teams end up winning it all. So that's why they're out there. They decided that they still wanted to play, even though there's so many one-year guys on the roster. So West Virginia's going to give them hell out there, and I'm going to be fully supporting them, and let's talk about it. So, but it has been 3 weeks since this team has taken the floor. When it lost in terrible fashion, only scoring 48 points in the Big 12 tournament to BYU. It seems like, basketball season has come and gone. So to be away from it for 3 weeks, watching some of the other competition in the NCAA tournament, it's like, oh yeah, like what's been going on with these players since in the team in whole. So over the last 3 weeks, the biggest news, and it was talked about earlier this week by head coach Ross Hodge on the 3 Guys Before the Game podcast, that backup point guard, freshman, however you want to identify him as, Amir Jenkins, will not be playing in this tournament due to 2 labrum tears in both of his shoulders. So that's significant news. And I thought that with football getting injury reports that we would be also seeing the same kind of things as basketball? And correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't think I ever saw too many of those throughout the year or in college basketball. Definitely not on West Virginia's part per se. And it just seemed like, okay, well, West Virginia's relatively healthy. It's not like what West Virginia was going through last year with the alleged fake, but perhaps somewhat real shoulder injury to Tucker DeVries last year. So we didn't know this. We didn't know that Amir Jenkins was playing with a torn labrum from the beginning of the season. And then apparently in the TCU contest in February, he hyperextended his arm that ended up being a tear in that TCU game by the end of the season. So seeing on Twitter reportedly that he had successful surgery today. So on the road to recovery for Amir. And I really think that's, as having someone, a friend of mine, back in high school playing his senior high school baseball season with a torn labrum in his non-throwing, or was it? No, I think it was his throwing shoulder. It's incredibly painful. It's debilitating. You eventually, if you let it linger and don't get surgically repaired, you're just going to have. It just makes it worse whenever you eventually go to heal it, because you will never be physically the same. It's not something that's necessarily going to heal on its own. So for Amir to have played with this and then it happened in both shoulders, I think it just gives a little more context, I feel, on his offensive game, especially shooting. I think he was an elite passer all season long and really could drive in the way that you hope that Jasper Floyd would. So I'm encouraged. I don't know, as it's going to pertain to the next two guys that I'm talking about, everyone, kind of worries in this day and age of college basketball that if you're not, or at college sports in general, if you're not a starter, you're unwilling to be a bench guy. So the speculation, I feel like, on social media over the last few weeks, this was even before the announcement came out about, since the season ended, and then Coach Hodge talks about this, that Amir Jenkins would be hitting the transfer portal. To be determined. Anything can happen, to each his own. But I wouldn't look anything more into it as of right now, that he just was injured and he was getting surgery and he will be back for next year. Of course, there has to be the financial piece. I completely understand that. And there is the reality that Miles Sadler is going to come in. And if Miles Sadler doesn't start, then he will be in very open competition with Amir Jenkins for that starting point guard position. But I would like to have Amir Jenkins back for next season. I would like to have all of the freshmen come back this season. But two other guys who have not made the journey out to Las Vegas, freshman Evan Barnings Jr. and MJ Feenane. Feenane, if we had the old labeling system in college athletics, a walk-on for this program. And then Evans Barning, I thought was the last piece to Coach Hodge's 2025 high school recruiting class. I think, if I remember correctly, that happened in June or July for last year. So the last piece to fill out the roster that he found at a AAU tournament. And if Barning, doesn't want, what did you do? I mean, if there was an NIL check involved, I understand this, but what did you think was going to happen? Jaden Forsyth redshirting, Barning didn't play in a single game this year. You would think there was a discussion that happened, come practice on the team. If you're good enough to play in your first year, you will see the court. If not, use this as a redshirt year, get bigger, faster, stronger, understand the system, and come back. But if he wants to go and test the waters at a lower level somewhere else, then more power to him, but would like to have him back. If Coach Hodge thought that highly of him to get him on the team for this season. But we'll see. Transfer portal opens April 7th. It'll be open for 14 days. Really like seeing the news on social today that Andrew Corbett of 247 Sports reporting West Virginia is in on a top big man in the transfer portal already. This is kind of like the quiet tampering period that we see in the NFL, and then definitely happens in college football, that players announcing their intentions to enter the transfer portal before it even opens so that they can have the dialogue that they're supposed to have in the transfer portal window, but instead they have visits on the first days of the transfer portal opening, and then by then, signed, sealed, delivered. We know how this goes. So we'll see what happens with Jenkins. We'll see what happens with Barning Jr. And any of the other guys who have eligibility for next year. But so that's where I'm kind of thinking is, are we thinking about this college basketball tournament? My head's already kind of also in the transfer portal, but I want to see them play. I want to see this team give one more effort. So let's scout this opponent in the Stanford Cardinal. Just the second time in the two programs' history that West Virginia and Stanford will meet on the hard court. The history goes back to December 28th, 1959, when West Virginia won in Los Angeles, California, so a 1-0 record. Looking at the Cardinal, their resume stands at 20 wins, 12 losses. They were 9-9 in ACC play. Doing a deeper dive and looking at their schedule for this season, Stanford had 5 wins against teams that made the NCAA tournament. West Virginia only had 4. But Stanford lost to Pitt, of all teams, in the 9-14 game in the first round of the ACC tournament, derailed any opportunity for them to make the NCAA tournament, opting for this Crown tournament. They are a Vegas favorite by 1.5 points. They have the statistical advantage in a number of stat categories. I'm not really going to go through them for just sake that I don't think that this needs to be super analyzed down by the numbers. But, they shoot better than the Mountaineers, including from the 3 and free throw line, better assist rate, turnover rate than the Mountaineers. I just think the difference in this one that really needs to come down to is Stanford's played 8 teams who were top 100 in the country in scoring defense. They went 4-4 in those contests. So what kind of effort does West Virginia bring defensively? Is it the vaunted defense that we saw early in the season, and even in I would say November and December, when they were battling down to the wire against Clemson, when they were battling down to the wire against Ohio State, and for 35 minutes played incredible defense against Bruce Thornton in those Ohio State Buckeyes, or Clemson getting beat on a couple of fluke threes there at the end of that game? Or are we going to see some of the stuff that we saw in the month of February? I think that's really what it comes down to me, is are these guys who are out of eligibility, Honor Huff, Trayson Eaglestaff, Harlan Obioha, Chance Moore, Jasper Floyd, Brennan Lorient, do they just want to be done, or do they want to end their careers with a better conclusion, and then that also might come with a payday? So that's where I think NIL works. This is what the culprit. I made this in a video, a couple of weeks ago about, just the psychological aspect of NIL on 18 to 22-year-olds. This is where NIL works, in my opinion, making it an incentives-based performance-based reward that you have to work toward. So this is actually, I feel like, a really interesting psychological experiment for West Virginia athletics here, in that if you dangle this carrot out at the end of the stick here and this NIL money, will these guys go out there and play for it really, really hard over the course of 3 days? So by them choosing to accept and participate, I feel like they will. So let's see it. In taking down Stanford, I think it comes down to really one player. And can they shut this guy down? 6'2", 185-pound freshman guard Ibuka Okori, averaging 23 points per game, one of the top scorers in college basketball, 4 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, shoots 83% from the free throw line, and got there just over 7 times per game on average during the season. So you'd have to imagine that he's going to get some of the star calls out there, if you want to call them that, because he was doing so throughout the regular season. NBADraft.net has Okori as a late first rounder in 2027, so think of him in the same kind of vein that Javon Small was. So he's the feature piece, I feel like, of this tournament. So if you hear his name a lot from the announcing crew, you feel like if he gets hot early, that there's going to be, the announcers were for Stanford in this game. They're playing out on the West Coast. Some bit of a West Coast kind of audience for this tournament. I'm just prepping you, Mountaineer Nation, for what you might expect, especially if he gets hot. So if West Virginia defends him very well, it's going to come down to Jasper Floyd on this one, I feel like, because he's going to be the primary ball handling defender. So what am I hoping for as a fan? Because again, this is an exhibition series. This doesn't mean much. I don't think I'm going to be ordering any sort of t-shirts when all is said and done of, college basketball crown tournament champions. If West Virginia even wins this tournament, gonna feel like a, more positive aftertaste to this lackluster of a season that didn't end in an NCAA tournament bid. For me, in this game specifically, it comes down to 5 things for 5 players. Drayson Eaglestaff, hit some threes. Honor Huff, hit some threes. Chance Moore, make your frickin' free throws. Jasper Floyd, take it to the rack and drive with purpose. Now, the interesting thing, I say it with Jasper Floyd, saying he's going to have to D-up Okori for this game. So probably the most important player for West Virginia in this contest is Jasper Floyd, what he gives you on the defensive end. Hopefully he doesn't get into foul trouble because you don't have Amir Jenkins to bring off the bench, and that's going to be a story in this one because off the bench you only have, and I'm not saying the 5th guy in Harlan Obioha, that will be West Virginia's starting 5, but because Brennan Lorient will be in there, you have DJ Thomas, you have Morris Ugasuk. I think, I don't know if the red shirt rules apply, like in football, if you participate in a bowl game, does that not count against games against your red shirt? Hopefully that doesn't happen because Jaden Forsyth, I don't think you would want to burn a red shirt on him for him to participate in this tournament, but he would give you, a 9th guy. Oyedeer's already used his red shirt last year and suddenly I think played 2 minutes all season. So doubtful that either of those 2 guys play if that's the case, at least for Forsyth. So West Virginia might only be down to 8 guys to play in this one. So Floyd's got to stay out of foul trouble, got to D-up Okori, and I just want him to drive. But that's the thing. Just have purpose, have a plan whenever you take it to the rack, Jasper Floyd. Just so many times I feel like this season that he has an intention, he either backs, pump fakes or changes his mind, wanting to do something different. I'm trapped, or the shot clock is about to go up. I have to throw up a prayer, and you're just thinking to yourself, what did you do with that whole possession? So, most important player on the floor is Jasper Floyd. And then for Harlan Obioha, you've been 3 weeks off your feet, man. Have you now, with that rest, look like the Harlan Obioha that played in the backyard brawl and really dominated? Or is it going to be the January-February version of Harlan Obioha? So that's what I'm hoping for him, that it looks more so like the former rather than the latter, because West Virginia could use that from him. That's what's really lacked, I feel like, all season, is that depth in the post. And that's why, going back to Corbett's report about a big man, I feel like that's first and foremost of Plan A, priority need for the 2026-27 roster construction is a big man. So if West Virginia wins, it will play the winner of Creighton and Rutgers on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, sorry. We're so 3 hours behind out there in Vegas, so a little bit earlier in the afternoon for them, a little bit later in the afternoon for us. If West Virginia wins on Saturday, it would play again then on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So good on the Mountaineer boys. I hope they go out there, yes, give their best effort for 40 straight minutes one more time for Coach Hodge and this staff. Shut down Okori, and then hit some of those objectives that I talked about. And if that's the case and they still end up losing, then so be it. It just wasn't meant to be for this season. And then we can kind of recap this or, turn the page quickly, because I feel like I've said my piece, a few weeks ago when West Virginia lost in the Big 12 tournament. And I go back and forth, having seen some of the other teams that West Virginia played in the end. Clemson lost to Iowa. Ohio State lost to TCU. Those were 2 wins I feel like that if West Virginia had, and then they didn't have the losses against Kansas State on the road at the end of the season and Utah at home, the worst team in the Big 12, West Virginia would have been in the NCAA tournament. 22 and 10, then they would have been in. But wasn't to be the case just because of those few dribbles plays that just did not go their way. And unfortunately, West Virginia is in this Crown basketball tournament. But then I see the other side of the coin of, all of the things that, again, complete flip over to the roster, all of these players coming up from mid-major levels, including Coach Ross Hodge. But then, then I go back and I look at how much West Virginia invested financially into the roster. So we'll see what happens of this basketball program once it moves on from this team, starts to construct the newest team. But this team could satisfyingly end this season with a championship in this tournament. If they could get all the way to the end, I think some intrigue of perhaps playing Rutgers. For one, Creighton's head coach, Greg McDermott, retiring. So it's, sayonara to him. Really been a legend, I feel like, at the mid-major level over the last, couple of decades for the Blue Jays. To play Rutgers again, even though Rutgers isn't that great of a team, old Big East matchup would be kind of cool, I guess you could say. And then in the other side of the bracket, if West Virginia could rematch up against Porter Moser and Oklahoma, that would be nice to finish them off in the championship game. So we'll see how it is. What are you thinking, Mountaineer Nation? How are you feeling about this tournament? Are you intrigued by it? Are you kind of like, let's just move on. Let's talk baseball, the spring game, and transfer portal construction? Or do you actually care and want to see them win? How invested are into it? What do you want to see? I'd love to know your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. So once again, please like this video so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube, and love to have you a subscriber to my channel. I don't know. We'll see how the weekend goes with this tournament, if it's worthy of bringing up some sort of a follow-up. Of course, we'll have the transfer portal to talk about next week and what moves West Virginia makes. And then we got to get back into football because spring practice is right about, I think, in the middle of it. And we'll be talking about the spring festival sooner rather than later. So thanks for tuning in, Mountaineer Nation. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week, and I have a lot of fun doing it. So hail West Virginia. Let's go.